Hey folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris, and pardon the terrible singing, I just can't help myself, but this video is about a fascinating letter, a 7-page letter that came out of the office of the president today, the 23rd of August 2020, from Cyril Ramaphosa, president of South Africa. And in this letter, he calls for an end to corruption. It puts me in mind of the old Shaggy song, It Wasn't Me. Yo, man, yo. Open up, man. Yeah, what do you want, man? My girl just caught me. You let her catch you? I don't know how I let this happen. With who? The girl next door, you know? Man, I don't know what to do. Say it wasn't you, all right? Honey came in and she caught me red-handed, creeping with the girl next door. Picture this, we were both butt naked, banging on the bathroom floor. How could I forget that I had given her an extra key? All this time she was standing there, she never took her eyes off me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was from Shaggy many years ago. And it puts me in mind of what's happening in the African National Congress as it remains deluded about its role in corruption in South Africa. Absolutely deluded. Yep. So Cyril Ramaphosa calls for a turning point in the fight against corruption in South Africa, nearly 3 years too late. Long after pervasive corruption has become the norm for the African National Congress, and nearly 3 years after the 54th Party Congress, which called for an end to the state capture era and mechanisms in place to protect South Africa from the ANC's predation upon the state and the citizens of South Africa. But like every single ANC abject failure, Cyril Ramaphosa deflects. And as I say, like Shaggy says, it wasn't me. You see, apartheid is to blame for the ANC's failure when it comes to corruption. Even though the ANC wasn't in government during apartheid, nor virtually any of its members ever part of the apartheid regime, apartheid is to blame nonetheless. Well, let me read some highlights from President Ramaphosa's letter here, ladies and gentlemen. He says, I'm sure you're aware that across the nation there's a sense of anger and disillusionment at reports of corruption. Say it ain't so, Cyril. In our response to the coronavirus pandemic. Well, there's a lot more than disappointment and anger over corruption. There's disappointment, anger, and blood boiling over your conduct, period, during the lockdown, Ramaphosa. Don't take it as a sign only the people are upset about the wholesale theft of state funds. No, it's a lot more than just that. What has caused the greatest outrage is that there are private sector companies and individuals, including civil servants, who have exploited a grave medical, social, and economic crisis to wrongfully enrich themselves. This is an unforgivable betrayal. Well, indeed it is. And so has the whole process of ANC corruption pervasive throughout its history of governance since the 1990s. The arms scandal, Armsgate, Oilgate, selling off the state strategic reserve to enrich friends and cronies, Travelgate, the Nkandla imbroglio. The list is endless, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have time to recount the ANC's sins here in this conversation. At the 54th African National Congress National Conference in December of 2017, our organization's highest decision-making body, in reflecting upon corruption, noted that there is an increase in corruption, factionalism, and dishonesty. Is it about corruption, ladies and gentlemen, or is it about factionalism within the African National Congress that worries Cyril and the ANC's leadership? Methinks it's about factionalism. The conference further said that the lack of integrity perceived by the public has seriously damaged the ANC's image. Perceived by the public. No, ladies and gentlemen, it's not the perception of corruption. It's the actual corruption of the ANC. And its mandate, it seems, unofficially, for it's our turn to eat. That is what people are upset about. That's what people are hot full of in South Africa. Not the perception of corruption. Stop with this nonsense. It was with this in mind that conference accordingly declared the ANC commits to the people of South Africa that we shall isolate and root out corrupt tendencies in the public and private sectors. Yet here we are, ladies and gentlemen, nearly 36 months later, towards the end of August 2020, 33 months later, and the ANC has rooted out no corruption, prosecuted no major state criminal actors, and in fact, throws corruption in the face of the very citizens of South Africa this past week with the instatement of Zandile Gumede who's under indictment, charged with corruption from Durban, out on bail, and they put her back in the provincial legislature. Can you believe this? And we're supposed to believe the credibility of the African National Congress when it comes to corruption, when it takes its own corrupt members and puts their cronies right back into power while they're under charges and awaiting prosecution. Can you fathom this, ladies and gentlemen? It is beyond conception. Since the 54th National Conference, we have taken decisive measures in government to disrupt and dismantle the state capture networks and decisively deal with the scourge of corruption. Have you really? What steps have you taken? Well, Ramaphosa lists a few of these. New leadership of the National Prosecuting Authority, South African Revenue Service, Public Investment Corporation, the Hawks, and State Security Agency. And we replaced board and executive leadership of strategic state-owned companies. How about you privatize state-owned companies and get your nose out of the business? Then you don't have to worry about state corruption. You don't have to worry about it. We established an investigative directive in the National Prosecuting Authority. Well, thank you so much. They used to have the Scorpions, and they were quite effective if you disbanded them over your paranoia that they would expose corruption in your party. We've also set up the Special Investigative Unit, Special Tribunal. Yet nobody has been brought to book for the corruption in South Africa. Quit establishing things that you don't use to prosecute people. They claim to have successfully recovered stolen funds. How much? 5,000 rand? Please share that with us. We've used competition policy to tackle excessive pricing and abusive market dominance in the private sector. Aha, price fixing by the government. Let's turn that in English, ladies and gentlemen. The government has fixed the prices to reduce competition and bankrupt private corporations. Market dominance in the private sector. Really? What about market dominance by parastatals like Eskom, Transnet, South African Airways, Denel? Shall I continue, ladies and gentlemen? The unfair market domination by state-owned entities with boards stuffed full of corrupt crony ANC appointments. The ANC is the movement that was so central to mobilizing our people for the achievement of our freedom. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, the African National Congress rewrites history. No Pan-African Congress, no Congress of the People, taking credit for the Freedom Charter, taking credit for Steve Biko's Black Consciousness Movement. Yes, the ANC, so central to liberation. A movement that was essentially moribund from 1963 after the Rivonia trial when all of the senior leadership was imprisoned for treason until the 1980s. Virtually no impact on South Africa whatsoever over 2 decades. Yet they were central to the liberation. But we're not done there, ladies and gentlemen. It is a matter of great concern to us that corruption has so deeply infected the state. Is it really, Ramaphosa? Then why has it taken 33 months? And the collapse of support for the African National Congress in response to its policies and its hysteria and its lack of scientific information to impose unwarranted, undemocratic constraints on South African peoples like tobacco bans, bans on open-toed shoes, bans on e-commerce, bans on alcohol, home arrest for 58 million people. Why has it taken the collapse of support for the ANC cratering to levels never seen in the modern era before corruption genuinely becomes a concern for you? What's really in play here, folks? Well, here's the first little measure that's in play. Once again, deflecting from their failures, the African National Congress and their president revert to the same tired old narrative. While the current allegations about corruption in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic have brought this issue sharply to the fore, the reality is that corruption in this country has far deeper roots. Indeed, it does. But apartheid was both morally and materially corrupt. Even as its laws enabled the theft of resources that rightly belonged to the people of South Africa, there were many in the administration, in state companies, in Bantustans, and in business who flouted even those corrupt laws to enrich themselves. And what does that have to do with the price of tea in Sri Lanka? Not a damn thing, Cyril Ramaphosa. Not a damn thing. Since you chased the Afrikaans-speaking bureaucrats out of the state apparatus, since you've eliminated virtually anyone who had any power whatsoever in South Africa during that era, from government, from the school system, and even hounding people out of business. What does apartheid have to do with your failures? The Apartheid Commission is not under review by the Zondo Commission. No, these are ANC politicians who are under review for their pervasive corruption. It was the Zuma administration who brought us the concept of state capture borrowed from Central Asia, but applied in mega fashion to South Africa. As a movement representing the aspirations of South African people having fought a just struggle against a brutal regime, it was our intention and our hope that the overthrow of apartheid would herald a new era of integrity, honesty, and ethical conduct by all positions of responsibility. Really? Yet Tony Ngani, straight out of the gate, secures a corrupt deal to get a discount on a car and winds up in prison over it. Right out of the gate. Instead of disciplining your members for their lack of loyalty, you should have been disciplining them for crime and corruption and booting them from your party and prosecuting with the state. But no, that's not how the ANC handles things. However, Cyril Ramaphosa says the ANC needs to take responsibility. The African National Congress has been and remains deeply implicated in South Africa's corruption problem. In fact, that is true. There's an honest admission. Thank you for that, Cyril Ramaphosa. A breath fresh of air. But so what? You've admitted. The 54th National Conference was a seminal moment in the history of our movement. Really? How? What has changed? Not a damn thing 33 months later. Today, the ANC and its leaders stand accused of corruption, with good reason, and they've been accused of corruption for 20 years, starting with the arms scandal. The ANC may not stand alone in the dock, but it does stand accused number one. It stands virtually alone. And the corruption that it hasn't committed, it's responsible for facilitating and allowing. How do we get here? For more than 26 years, the ANC has been in government at a national level and in most provinces and municipalities. This has meant that leadership positions in the African National Congress have been seen as the most direct route to the first instance employment and in the second instance to influence the award of tenders and distribution of other government resources. Welcome to the party, Cyril Ramaphosa. Many decades or many years and a few decades late you are to the party, my friend. The term tenderpreneurs was coined in South Africa 2 decades ago to describe this very situation. And now you're bringing it to the world's attention 33 months after you came to power? The people see how organizational principles and processes are corrupted for personal gain. They see how this deviant behavior goes unchecked and allows unscrupulous and sometimes criminal elements to flourish. We cannot then blame the people if they stay away from our branches, programs, initiatives. Well, you will. I'm sure you'll blame them. You blame white South Africans for your failures. You blame colored South Africans for your failures. And you blame Asian South Africans for your failures, even though all of those people are members of your party. How shameful is that? Perhaps the best known form of corruption is the award of tenders and other contracts to certain companies based on conflictual relations such as friendships or family connections. Or how about the corrupt practice of giving contracts and tenders only to people based on the skin pigmentation they display? That's also corrupt. Then there's the jobs for pals, where politicians and officials disregard hiring processes to employ family members, friends, or associates. Yep. Local ANC leaders have used food parcels meant for the poor to buy political favors from those people in the branch or broader community whom they rely on for their positions. Yes, that's corrupt as well. Is the capture of state institutions by public interest facilitated by politicians and officials at the highest level, as identified by the Zondo Commission, reveals a disturbing level of grand corruption. Indeed it does, and has for several years. Yet we see no prosecution, Cyril. 33 months in office. This is as bad as the Trump administration's failure to prosecute Hillary Clinton for violation of the Espionage Act, or James Comey for disclosing classified information. Not only has money been stolen, but many of these institutions have been left deeply dysfunctional and virtually destroyed. It has caused huge damage to the economy and the capacity state. Well, golly gee, what a revelation, Cyril Ramaphosa. Thank you for sharing that tidbit, which some of us have been sharing for 2 decades. We cannot hope to win back the people's trust if we continue to allow cadres who are charged with criminal conduct for corruption to occupy positions of responsibility within government and our movement. Really, Zandile Gumeda, appointed to the provincial legislature in KwaZulu-Natal this week, just days ago. You can't allow those suspected of corruption. What about those charged with corruption? You put them right back. Every cadre accused of or reported to be involved in corrupt practices must account to the Integrity Commission immediately or face disciplinary processes. Disciplinary process. Not criminal charges. You notice disciplinary processes within the African National Congress. Why? Because in South Africa, the ANC is more important than the people of South Africa or the nation or the Constitution. Party above the people. That is the African National Congress's way of governance, because only they know, the elites in the ANC, some of whom are functionally illiterate. They know best. Require ANC leaders to make regular declarations of financial interest. Are you serious? As a company grade officer, I had to disclose all my financial holdings because I was involved in contractual work. As a field grade officer, I had to reveal all of my savings and financial investments to my government, down to the share and stock and date purchased and sold, because I was in a position of senior responsibility and trust. And you're just now, 26 years after coming to power, realizing that senior officials need to publicly disclose to the government what their investments are in. This is pathetic. And you blame apartheid for your failures when you can't even do common sense measures to show the public transparency. Shame on you. Conduct lifestyle audits of all ANC leaders and public representatives. Aha! Now we're getting to the crux of the matter. You're going to use counterintelligence to spy on members of your party, ostensibly to avoid corruption. But what's really going on here? Cyril, are you desperate to regain control of the ANC? Is that what's going on here? Is this an attempt to sideline your opponents? When we joined the ANC, we each made a solemn declaration that we were joining the organization without motives of material advantage or personal gain. Yeah, that one I find hard to believe. Let me see that form you signed, that declaration. And by the way, without motives of material advantage or personal gain, Ramaphosa, how in the world did you acquire $450 million as a union leader? It wasn't through your business acumen, and it sure is a personal gain, all coming at the expense of multinationals shaken down by the ANC and Lutuli House for equity stakes to hand out to their friends like Cyril Ramaphosa. Material gain, you have no credibility on this matter, mister. No credibility whatsoever. Those who see the ANC as a path to wealth, to power, to influence, or status must know that they do not belong in our movement. Well, why is it now, over a decade after we saw a rash of assassinations of local ward councillors throughout KwaZulu-Natal, when local aspiring young ANC cadres decided their path to fame, fortune, and wealth was as a local ward councillor to be appointed to replace the person in their own party whom they assassinated or had rubbed out by gangsters, so they could be appointed to the position, so they could get their fingers on the tenders and be the wealthy ones. Where was this concern then? It was non-existent, ladies and gentlemen. Non-existent. Pathetic. Instead of aspiring to be doctors, lawyers, dentists, soldiers, farmers, counselors, teachers, young ANC members in the Youth League aspire to be counselors and MECs and MPs, so they too can get their clutches onto the tenders and become tenderpreneurs. We are acting swiftly to end COVID-19 related corruption. What about prosecution for past corruption? What about Gumeda, appointed back to office while out on bail? Our criminal justice agencies must do their work without fear, prejudice, or favor. Well, gee, you think? And finally, he closes, let's us together restore the integrity of our movement and earn the trust that the people of South Africa have placed in us. Well, Cyril, I hate to break this to you, my friend, but that trust is long gone. Even in the most devout and reliable ANC constituencies in South Africa, that trust has been broken. And getting the vote of South Africans on identity alone will not suffice going forward. You have to earn your vote. And at the moment, the ANC's earned no one's vote. They'll get votes, but they've earned no one's votes. So what's really going on, folks, here? What's really going on? Aside from the race-baiting refrain of blaming everything on apartheid, notice that everything is apartheid's fault. No acceptance responsibility for the corruption within their own party. Homegrown corruption within the ANC. They blame it on apartheid. Aside from this obvious race-baiting narrative, is this a genuine anti-corruption effort? It seems unlikely to me, 33 months after he was supposed to have done this. Is this an effort to eliminate internal dissent and discipline cadres in order for Cyril Ramaphosa to retain power or to gain the advantage against the forces opposed to him within the ANC? Possibly. But what's really going on here? This is the ANC's terror, absolute terror that they will be punished at the ballot box by South Africans who are hot full of this nonsense. That's what this is, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't genuine corruption, anti-corruption. This may be Ramaphosa trying to shore up his base and survive a coup inside the ANC. But the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, this is about the ANC's terror for its failure and finally being punished at the ballot box in 2021. Bingo, we have a winner. Well, folks, that's my video on Cyril Ramaphosa's newfound anti-corruption drive. his desire to clean up the ANC with a 7-page letter sent to Luthuli House. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. What's it all about? What's it all about? Well, as Shaggy says, it wasn't me. As Cyril says, it wasn't us. It was apartheid, ladies and gentlemen. That's who's to blame for ANC corruption. Well, if you're not a subscriber to Chris Wyatt Africa, I ask you to take a moment and smash that subscription button and become a subscriber to Chris Wyatt Africa. Be sure to toggle the bell icon. That gets you notified of other videos and my live streams. If you want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a comment. And finally, I ask that you smash that like button because likes drive viewership. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in and watching this video. Appreciate your patronage. God bless. Have a safe day. And never trust an ANC cadre. Again.